Hi everyone, it's Kim here and welcome to part 2 of my mini room makeover series where I'll be showing you how to make a round cushion, how to cover a lampshade and upholster a footstool. If you missed part 1, make sure you go and check that out before you start watching this video, and let's get started. For this project you'll need a round cushion pad and fabric. I've used 2 different colours of fabric. You'll need a long dowel needle, some embroidery thread, a sewing needle and 2 buttons. Start by measuring the circumference of your cushion pad. Because I've used 4 panels to my cushion, I've divided my circumference measurement into 4. I'll leave a link in the description to written instructions just so it's a bit clearer for you. Next, measure from the centre point at the top to the centre point at the back. Mine was about 15 inches. The circumference measurement will be how wide your fabric needs to be, and the measurement from centre to centre will be the length that you'll need. So my cushion was 42 inches around and 15 centre to centre. So be sure to add your seam allowance to these measurements and add an extra 2 inches to the width for hemming. So once you've got your fabric panels cut, you want to place your first and second pieces right sides together and sew. So sew down the long line so it joins. Open that up and take your third piece and put it right sides together on top of the second piece and sew. And carry on until all 4 pieces are sewn together into a strip. Once you have your strip, take the 2 ends and sew right sides together into a tube. Hem the top and bottom of the tube by folding over twice by ½ an inch and sewing. Once you've done that, turn the tube right side out and place the cushion pad in the middle of the fabric. Use a strong top stitch thread with a sewing needle and start by sewing the opposite points of the tube together to meet in the middle of the cushion and pull it tight. Tie a knot in the thread to keep these points in place in the middle. And I'm just putting the stitches through the hemline so you won't see them too much. And then repeat the step on the opposite corners of the fabric as well. So in one side, then into the opposite side and pull tight so it all meets in the middle, and then tie it in a knot to make it secure. If you pull out the folds that this has created, these are going to be the next points you're going to sew. Repeat this process by sewing the opposite points together to meet into the middle until your fabric is completely pleated into itself. I kept going until all the corner pleats were all pulled into the middle. Tie your thread off in a knot. Now you can go around and rearrange your pleats so that they all look neat. So next you want to take your two large buttons, your embroidery thread and the dowel needle. Thread your embroidery thread through the needle and tie a knot in the opposite end. Push the needle through the centre of the cushion, through the pad as well, and out through the opposite side. This can be quite tricky, so take your time with it. Thread your button through the needle and then go back through the cushion pads to the opposite side again. Attach the second button on the opposite side and keep going back and forth, sewing through the buttons until it's very secure. Pull the thread tight so you can create the sunken in look. To tie off the thread, take your needle underneath one of the buttons to make a loop and then tie a knot through the thread. I've wrapped my thread around the button a few times just to make sure it's really secure before I tied it in a knot. And that's your cushion finished. I've used a lampshade kit to create my lampshade, and this could be for both ceiling lights and table lamps depending on how you construct it. It can also be made in lots of different sizes depending on which kit you pick. So this is what comes in the kit. So my lampshade is 30 centimeters by 15 centimeters, so I need a strip of fabric which measures just a few inches bigger than this. You'd also need textile glue, trim if you want to put trim on it, and the lamp stand if you're making a table lamp. So you want to start with your adhesive panel. Try to flatten it down before you start your project because it is really rolled up, so if you flatten it down before you start, it'll make it a little bit easier. So place your fabric down right side down and attach the self-adhesive panel to the backing of the fabric. Make sure your pattern is straight when you're sticking it down. I've used the leopard's heads as a guide because the fabric wasn't quite straight. So start peeling off the paper and flattening down the adhesive on the back. So once the panel is stuck, you want to cut down your fabric to the size of the panel. And this is what it will look like. Again, we're rolling. Snap back the top and bottom edges until they break. You'll see there's a little groove where you can break it. If it doesn't snap straight away, then just use something to crease the groove. So use a pair of scissors just to push down on it, and then that will help it to break, because it could be quite fiddly. Carefully peel back these edges and try to avoid the fabric fraying, but don't worry if it does slightly. Trim off any frayed strands that you may have. Take your double-sided self-adhesive tape and stick a strip along one short edge of the panel. Don't stick it onto the fabric, just the white panel part. And peel back the top of this tape. Now, using the double-sided tape, stick it around the circumference of the two frame pieces. Push the tape around the frame and then remove the top side of the tape. Lay the lampshade panel out flat, wrong side up. You can use your weights again to keep this flat. Place the two frames on either side of the middle panel. There are two grooves in the frames where they've been joined together, so use this groove as your starting point. This is where you need to make sure that you're constructing the lampshade in the right way, so that it could either be for a table lamp or a ceiling lamp. So just make sure the bulb side of the frame is facing the right direction. Start to roll the frames along the edges of the middle panel until you reach the end, and stick them all in place as you go. Once you're happy, use the finishing tool that comes with the kit to tuck the fabric under the frame to neaten the edges. Snip into these parts so the fabric can wrap around. If you're going to add a trim, use your textile glue now to adhere the trim to the lampshade. And that's the lampshade finished. This is one of my favourite projects of the makeover, it's so unique. And finally, our footstool. Now I have a helper for this one, here she comes. So here's what the stool looks like before. Start by stripping the old fabric off the stool. Most upholstered furniture will have a trim around the edge which covers the staples, so pull off this trim and pull out the staples using the pliers. If your stool has the tacks in the top like mine, use your pliers to pull these out too. So strip it back to just its bare cushion pad. I found my footstool on eBay and it was only about £12, so it's a great idea to try and find a second-hand stool to upholster, and it can be really cheap. I think this stool was quite old, so I was able to just pull all the tacks out with my hands. Vienna started to get really impatient because she knew she was going to help me paint this stool, so she really wanted me to just get on with it. Yay, it's stripped. Right, now time to sand. So I'm just going to sand down the legs and the base, so we've got a rough surface to paint on top of. Once it's all sanded down and you're happy, it's time to paint. Vienna's favourite part. I watered down my paint slightly just so it wasn't too opaque. And I did give it about 2 coats of paint. Once the paint's dry, I sanded over the legs just slightly, just so I gave it a bit more of a rough finish. You'll need your fabric to measure about 6 inches bigger than the stool cushion itself. So place your fabric over the stool as central as possible, and then we're going to start hammering the tacks in. So you need a tacks and a hammer. This is an upholstery hammer. So find the hole you want to start with and fold your fabric to create a really small pleat. Push into the hole where you're going to put your tack and then hammer it into the middle. This was a little bit fiddly and it took me a few goes, but I got there in the end. So repeat with another hole. So I went to the one next to the one I've just done, and I've folded and pleated my fabric in the opposite direction. So repeat this process, stick the tack into the hole and hammer it in place. So keep repeating this process, working from the middle outwards, pleating the fabric slightly and then hammering the tack in. Once all your tacks are hammered in, you can trim back your fabric. Using a staple gun, pull the fabric taut over the edge of the stool and staple the fabric to the wooden edge. Start in the middle of one side and then go to the opposite side of the stool and staple in the same place, and then to the other 2 opposite sides. So you've got 1 staple in each side of the stool. Once you have a staple on all 4 sides, add more staples until you've got a complete line going around the entire stool. Trim the excess fabric back using curved scissors so you get really close to your staples. Using your textile glue again, attach the trim around the edge of the stool over the top of the staples so you can't see them. You can use pins to keep the trim in place while the glue dries. So leave that to dry and then you're finished. So that's my mini room makeover series complete. If you put all your projects together into one room, it's going to look absolutely stunning, and I can't wait to see what you've made. Thank you for watching. Bye!